Imagine looking down at your wrist and seeing more than a way to tell time. A $30 Casio can say you value practicality. A Seiko 5 can say you appreciate mechanical watches without overpaying. A Rolex Submariner can signal success before you say a word. And a Patek Philippe Nautilus can feel less like an accessory and more like a generational trophy. That is what makes watches so strange. In a world where every phone tells perfect time, watches should have become unnecessary. And yet they became more powerful than ever. People still spend hundreds, thousands, and sometimes millions of dollars on tiny machines that do something their phone already does for free. So the real question is not, why do people still wear watches? The real question is, how did watches become status symbols? For most of history, knowing the time was not as simple as checking your phone. Timekeeping was tied to trade, navigation, railways, military coordination, and modern work. Pocket watches were once symbols of order, wealth, and refinement. Then wristwatches became practical, especially during war, when soldiers needed to coordinate quickly without pulling a watch from their pocket. Over time, the wristwatch became connected to action. Pilots needed reliable watches. Divers needed waterproof watches. Soldiers needed durability. Businessmen needed punctuality. A watch was not just decoration, it was equipment. Then came the quartz crisis. In the 1960s and 1970s, quartz watches changed everything. They were more accurate, cheaper, easier to produce, and more practical than mechanical watches. For a while, it looked like traditional mechanical watches were finished. Why would anyone pay more for something less accurate? That question forced the watch industry to reinvent itself. Mechanical watches could no longer win as the best tool for telling time. So they became something else, objects of craft, heritage, engineering, taste, and identity. In other words, the watch stopped being just a timekeeping device. It became a story you wear. At the affordable level, watches are about function, reliability, nostalgia, and personality. This is the world of Casio, Timex, and G-Shock. These watches do not need luxury boutiques or waiting lists. Their value is simple, they work. A Casio F91W is cheap, light, accurate, and iconic. It is one of the most recognizable digital watches ever made. A Casio 800, often called the Casio Royale, gives you a world time look for a tiny price. A G-Shock DW5600 or GA2100 is famous because it can take abuse and still keep going. Timex has its own charm too. The Timex Weekender is simple and casual, while the Timex Q brings vintage-inspired design at an accessible price. These watches are not trying to impress through cost. They impress through usefulness. And that gives them their own kind of status. The person wearing a simple Casio might be saying, "I do not need to prove anything." That is part of the appeal. Affordable watches also create the entry point into watch culture. A lot of collectors do not start with Rolex or Omega. They start with a Casio, a Timex, or a basic Seiko. Sometimes it is the watch they wore in school. Sometimes it is the watch their father or grandfather wore. That matters because watches are emotional objects. Even a cheap watch can become valuable if it becomes part of your life. Then comes the mid-range market. This is where watches become more than practical tools. They become hobbies. Brands like Seiko, Citizen, Orient, Tissot, and Hamilton sit in this space. For many people, this is where the obsession begins, because mid-range watches let you experience real watchmaking without luxury prices. Seiko is one of the best examples. The Seiko is often someone's first automatic watch. The Seiko Presage Cocktail Time shows elegant Japanese design at a reasonable price. The Seiko Prospex line, especially models like the Turtle, Samurai, and Alpinist, gives enthusiasts serious tool watch energy without entering luxury territory. Citizen brings a different kind of value. The Citizen EcoDrive line uses light as power, which removes the annoyance of battery changes. The ProMaster series offers real dive and adventure watches for people who actually want durability. Orient is loved by enthusiasts for models like the Bambino, a clean dress watch, and the Komatsu, a strong, affordable diver. On the Swiss side, Tissot offers heritage and accessibility. The PRX became popular because it gives people the integrated bracelet sports watch look without luxury pricing. The Gentleman is a clean everyday watch, and the Le Local brings a more classic dress style. Hamilton has military and Hollywood appeal, with watches like the Khaki Field, the Murph from Interstellar, and the Ventura, famous for its unusual design and connection to Elvis. This level of watch culture is not usually about flexing wealth. It is about taste. A person wearing a Seiko Alpinist, Hamilton Khaki, or Tissot PRX may not be trying to show off. They may be signaling that they know something, that they appreciate design, that they chose the watch for a reason. That is where status becomes more subtle. Luxury status says, I can afford this. Enthusiast status says, I understand this. Then we enter luxury watches, where the watch becomes more than a product. It becomes a symbol. Brands like Rolex, Omega, Cartier, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Richard Mille do not just sell watches. They sell mythology. Rolex is the clearest example. Rolex has built one of the strongest brands in the world by connecting its watches to achievement, exploration, sport, and success. The Submariner is not just a dive watch. It is the dive watch. The Daytona is tied to racing, celebrity culture, and auction hype. The Datejust is a symbol of classic professional success. The GMT Master 2, especially the Pepsi and Batman versions, is connected to travel and status. Rolex mastered a powerful formula: make watches recognizable, reliable, and hard to get. People know what a Rolex is. They know it means something. But many models are not always easy to buy at retail. That scarcity makes the brand feel even more desirable. Omega built its status differently. Omega is tied to history, precision, and adventure. The Speedmaster became legendary because it went to the moon. The Seamaster became famous through diving culture and James Bond. The Aquaterra gives Omega a clean, everyday luxury option. If Rolex often represents achievement and status, Omega often represents history, technology, and adventure. Cartier plays another game entirely. Cartier watches are not just about mechanical specs. They are about design. The Tank is one of the most elegant watches ever made. The Santos is one of the earliest wristwatch designs. The Panthère feels like jewelry and watchmaking combined. Cartier proves that watch status does not always come from technical complexity. Sometimes it comes from shape, taste, and cultural elegance. Patek Philippe represents tradition, legacy, and generational wealth. The Nautilus is one of the most desired luxury sports watches in the world. The Calatrava represents classic dress watch purity. The Aquanaut gives Patek a more modern, casual identity. Patek's famous message is that you never really own one. You merely look after it for the next generation. That turns a watch into more than a purchase. It becomes an heirloom. Audemars Piguet changed luxury watches with the Royal Oak. When it launched, the idea of an expensive steel sports watch was radical. The Royal Oak turned industrial design into high luxury with its octagonal bezel, integrated bracelet, and bold shape. Later, the Royal Oak Offshore made the design bigger, louder, and more aggressive. Richard Mille took the status game into the modern era. Watches like the RM0111, RM55, and Rafael Nadal models look more like race cars or engineering experiments than traditional watches. They are associated with athletes, celebrities, Formula One, and ultra-high net worth collectors. They are not quiet watches. They are meant to be noticed. All of these watches tell time. But that is not really what people are buying. They are buying identity. This is where quartz versus mechanical becomes important. Quartz is objectively better for accuracy and affordability. It is practical, reliable, and low maintenance. For most people, quartz makes more sense. But mechanical watches survive because they are not judged only by practicality. A mechanical watch is powered by springs, gears, and tiny moving parts. You can wind it. You can feel the rotor move. You can look through a display case back and see the movement working. It feels alive in a way quartz usually does not. That is why mechanical watches became romantic. They are less convenient, but more emotional. And in watches, emotion matters. Swiss watchmaking became powerful because it turned tradition into a global reputation. Swiss-made became a promise of precision, patience, and excellence. Japan created a different identity around innovation, reliability, and value. Seiko, Citizen, and Casio gave the world quartz disruption, solar-powered watches, rugged digital watches, and some of the best affordable mechanical watches available. But status is not only created by craftsmanship. It is also created by scarcity and culture. Limited editions, discontinued models, celebrity wrist shots, waitlists, auction records, and social media hype all change how people see a watch. A steel sports watch can become more desirable than a gold dress watch. A colorful dial can suddenly become impossible to find. A model that once sat unnoticed can explode when collectors rediscover it. That can be exciting, but it can also become unhealthy. During hype cycles, people start treating watches like stocks. Collectors become speculators. Waiting lists become status symbols of their own. The question shifts from, do I love this watch? To, can I get this before someone else does? Still, that investment angle is part of why watches became so culturally powerful. Unlike many luxury items, some watches can hold value or even appreciate. That gives buyers a justification. They can say, it is not just spending, it is an asset. Sometimes that is true. Often, it is more complicated. Brand demand, condition, rarity, originality, service history, and market timing all matter. Then social media made watches even more visible. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, watch forums, red carpets, podcasts, and celebrity culture turned watches into public signals. People could see what athletes, actors, shoes rappers, collectors, and influencers were wearing. A watch was no longer just noticed in a boardroom or boutique. It was screenshotted, posted, analyzed, and copied. This created two kinds of status: quiet status and loud status. A Grand Seiko snowflake might signal deep watch knowledge. A Cartier tank might whisper taste. A Rolex Daytona might announce success. A Richard Mille might scream wealth. A Casio G-Shock might signal practicality and confidence. Each one speaks a different language. And that is the real reason watches survived the smartphone. A phone tells the time, but a watch tells a story. It tells people something about what you value: precision, history, design, durability, success, nostalgia, luxury, minimalism, adventure, or craft. That is why watches exist at every level. Affordable watches give people reliability and personality. Mid-range watches give enthusiasts craftsmanship and value. Luxury watches give buyers heritage, scarcity, and status. And across all three levels, the watch becomes personal. A phone is the same black rectangle everyone carries. A watch is different. It sits on your body. It becomes part of your daily routine. It collects scratches, memories, and meaning. It can mark a graduation, a promotion, a wedding, a trip, a milestone, or a family connection. The watch industry survived because it stopped competing with technology on function and started competing on meaning. Casio makes people feel practical and nostalgic. Seiko makes people feel like they found real value. Tissot and Hamilton make people feel connected to heritage. Rolex makes people feel successful. Omega makes people feel connected to adventure. Cartier makes people feel elegant. Patek Philippe makes people feel like they are holding a legacy. Audemars Piguet makes people feel bold. Richard Mille makes people feel untouchable. Every watch brand is selling time. But the best ones are really selling identity. So what does your watch say about you? Maybe it says you like simplicity. Maybe it says you care about craftsmanship. Maybe it says you admire history. Maybe it says you made it. Maybe it says you do not care what anyone thinks. That is the beauty of watches. They can be cheap or expensive, digital or mechanical, Japanese or Swiss, vintage or modern, quiet or loud. But once you choose one, it becomes part of your story. And in a world where time is everywhere, the watch survived by becoming something deeper. Not just a way to measure time, a way to express who we are.